Good morning, good afternoon. We will get started in just one more moment or so. Thanks again for joining. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. We'll get started in just a moment. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for joining the Zadara's webcast today. Today we've got a great session with two speakers. We're going to be talking about how MSPs and hosting providers gain competitive advantage or competitive edge, in a post-pandemic cloud rush. Before we get started, we get into introductions, just a couple of housekeeping items for you guys. We will be taking questions during this session, so please use the questions function on the GoToWebinar control panel for submitting your questions. I'll be monitoring them throughout the presentation, and if we can, we'll squeeze them in during the presentation. If not, should have time at the end that we can handle those questions too. So please feel free to submit those, and we'll get to them at some portion today. So thanks again for attending. Like I said, we've got two great speakers. Let's introduce them and get right into it. Should we go to the next slide, please? And welcome Andrew and Noam. Yeah, it looks like we just get started in just a minute. Get the slides moving. There we go, excellent. Okay, we've got Andrew Smith and Noam Shandar. Andrew, do you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Smith. I'm a research manager on IDC's Cloud Infrastructure Services team. And also, Noam, do you want to introduce yourself before I hop into my slides? I'll hop back there.
Absolutely. Good morning and good afternoon if you're in Europe. I'm Noam Shandar. I'm the Vice President of Solution Architecture worldwide for Zadara.
All right. Well, why don't I jump right in? We've got a lot to talk about. I'm going to try and take about the next 20 minutes to just go through a couple different topics here. The first, I want to give all of you a high-level view of the cloud IaaS market, including kind of basic definition, size, share, and forecast. I want to give you a little bit of context about how infrastructure spending in enterprises has kind of shifted to cloud IaaS compared to traditional IT purchases, IT infrastructure purchases. I want to go through a couple key challenges that we see from the IT infrastructure standpoint within enterprises and relate those back to how IaaS helps solve, mitigate, address some of those challenges. And then specific to the audience today, I want to kind of connect the dots a little bit about how MSPs fit into the cloud IaaS equation and give you guys a couple of key takeaways to summarize the presentation. So a lot to cover. Let's jump right into some of the market statistics. So what you're looking at on the left is kind of the total cloud IaaS market. At IDC, we define that as the combination of compute and storage resources. We keep networking separate, but you can see the breakdown of leading providers. So in 2020, this was a $65.5 billion market. AWS leading in market share, followed by Microsoft, Alibaba, and Google, and then kind of a long tail of other providers within that yellow segment. I guess the key takeaway here is that the top 5 providers account for 77% of market share, so consolidated much around the top providers. What did leading providers in the market focus on during the last year? Security and compliance capabilities remained critical to delivering value and differentiation in this market. From an IaaS perspective, a lot of that means improving data center footprints, improving SLAs around data durability and uptime, things as simple as improved replication, data resilience. All of that can kind of help them tell us a better story around security and compliance. In 2020, we also saw this shift where leading providers almost all embraced hybrid cloud deployments instead of taking a harder line as they had in the past, saying, well, public cloud is the best place for your data and workloads. More and more, it's about hybrid, that kind of middle ground where we recognize that some data and workloads are best in the cloud, some data and workloads are best on premises, and it's about bridging that gap. How do you make that operationally efficient for the enterprise? And then last but not least, we have to kind of look back on COVID's impact on the total market, and counterintuitively, the impact was minimal. The IaaS market was one of few in IT infrastructure that saw very little impact. A lot of that due to kind of some of the characteristics of IaaS and enterprise decisions to either invest more in cloud solutions or pull up their timeline to invest and deploy cloud solutions. We did a lot of research on this over the past year and a half, asking enterprises over and over again what their plans were. So we're pretty confident that, the past year and a half, this market has remained very resilient. So how does that look throughout the forecast period? So here you're seeing the breakdown of IaaS, compute and storage, their relationship to one another over the 5-year forecast period. Like I mentioned, so the forecast is in 2021, we'll hit $87 billion, up from that $65.5 billion, growing to $225 billion by 2025. So that brings you to a compound annual growth rate for compute at 29% and for storage 27%. Some of the drivers, like I mentioned, that risk aversion and OpEx purchase model, specifically related to some of the macroeconomic uncertainty, is highly desirable right now. Cloud buyer maturation, a lot of enterprises have moved past that kind of initial test and pilot phases and are continuing to adopt more and more resources, move more and more data to the cloud. And that the kind of consistent enterprise data growth that we see, the desire for enterprises to generate more business value from data, apply more analytics to data, keep more data for what could potentially be an innovative outcome for their customers. All of that leads to storing more data, analyzing more data, using more compute in the cloud. But the market growth, I think I've kind of enumerated. There are inhibitors in this market. It's not all a rosy picture. So what are some of the inhibitors that could potentially affect this growth? The first is workload repatriation. Not every application, workload, piece of data that moves to the cloud will stay there. We typically talk about workload movement as an ongoing process. as enterprises try to reach the best balance between price and performance of their workloads. So we expect data and workloads to move out of cloud as well, shifting those dollars around. Security and compliance here does continue to act as an inhibitor, mostly in the way that it extends proof of concept time, leads enterprises to elongate decision making around cloud adoption. That kind of thing will kind of tamper cloud growth over time. And finally, price reduction over time. Almost all public cloud providers are kind of expected to meet this ongoing race to the bottom in terms of what they provide for dollar per terabyte or dollar per gigabyte in storage and dollar per vCPU hour on the compute side. That baseline cost has consistently moved down over time, and that forces cloud providers, cloud IaaS providers, to pursue higher level value services, things maybe within kind of the realm of platform as a service and software as a service, where they may not be as equally comfortable. So let's look at this in a little bit more context, taking a step back. The dark blue line is kind of the public cloud IaaS market we've been talking about, but the lighter blue line gives you a little bit of a context around how this growth looks compared to the traditional and private cloud infrastructure market. So I'll bring your attention to kind of 2020 and 2021, where we anticipate reaching an inflection point in enterprise spend, where public cloud IaaS will be larger and continue to outgrow the traditional and private cloud infrastructure segment. This is kind of significant from a market standpoint as we see this start to flip. The IDC crystal ball only goes so far into the future, but given the resilience of this market after the past year compared to the traditional market and what we've seen out of leading providers, we kind of expect this to come to fruition, barring some unseen macroeconomic uncertainty. Something that we haven't anticipated, like what we saw last year, could certainly affect this market.
Hi, Andrew. Steve, real quick back here. I wanted to just ask you a quick clarifying question that came up. When you say public cloud and some of the public cloud IaaS numbers you were showing, that includes MSPs? Is that correct?
Yes. So it would include MSPs if they're purchasing from those cloud services providers to make their own service and resell that, or it could also include MSPs who actually install and manage their own infrastructure.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Of course. So let's jump into some of those enterprise challenges. I kind of want to use these as real world scenarios as to where enterprises are struggling and how IaaS solutions help mitigate and overcome some of those challenges. The first, managing that exponential data growth. I've kind of hit on it briefly before, but the key challenge here for many enterprises is that their IT budgets are often stagnant or growing in the kind of low single digits, but the capacity of data that they need to manage, analyze, and integrate into the business is growing at a much higher rate. So a lot of enterprises are asking themselves, how do I do more with less? So what are the numbers in terms of capacity? IDC estimates that in aggregate, so the total enterprise install base of storage, including public cloud, dedicated cloud, and traditional IT, will grow at a 5-year compound annual growth rate of 30.9% to 5.5 zettabytes in 2025. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of the massive scale and an understanding of how difficult this challenge is for many enterprises. So what are they doing? They're looking to IaaS services to do more with less. A lot of times they can get increasingly cheaper and easy to manage capacity in terms of compute and storage, and implement that into the enterprise, and also take advantage of that kind of elastic scalability and flexible consumption models in order to keep budgets in check. Now that dovetails with our next, I went the wrong way, sorry. There we are. That dovetails with our next challenge, which is kind of the way many enterprises were impacted by 2020 and plan their IT budgeting for 2021. We saw a lot of enterprises kind of remain on the back foot in terms of how they wanted to budget their spending. And just the fact that there's still a lot of ongoing uncertainty around macroeconomic conditions, how businesses will be able to come out of 2021, and thus how they want to increase or decrease their IT spending. IaaS is a key piece of this puzzle because it is kind of inherently gives that flexible consumption model and ability to attribute budget to OpEx spending rather than upfront capital expenditures that might be on a traditional storage system or piece of hardware. So recent survey we did indicated that 57% of enterprises were able to achieve a further reduction in their operating expenditures after implementing IaaS storage, and 69% reported a reduction in CapEx spend after implementing IaaS storage. So it's really part of that, really helping alleviate some of that risk aversion by giving customers the flexibility to deploy and consume infrastructure resources as they need to. The next challenge is how enterprise strategies for deploying cloud. So what we find as we continue to survey enterprises, what we find is that hybrid cloud deployment is the predominant model. So 55% of enterprises say they currently have a hybrid cloud, which is kind of a mix of public cloud and on-premises. 78% indicate that their enterprise builds their cloud strategy around one primary public cloud IaaS provider and kind of a host of secondary or tertiary providers, and only 11% of enterprises use multiple primary public cloud providers, cloud IaaS providers, in what I guess we would typically call that multi-cloud model. So why? Well, it's because achieving that multi-cloud model is difficult. It is by far the most challenging. Enterprises indicate that they have difficulty managing different workflows and management tools across multiple clouds. There's a lack of unified security monitoring and management systems across multiple clouds, difficulty sharing and migrating large volumes of data, and difficulty having to manage updates across multiple public cloud platforms. I would add one more in here that I haven't listed, but typically managing multiple billing models can also be extremely challenging for enterprises, especially over the long term. So IaaS is a key piece of this puzzle, but a lot of enterprises are having trouble getting the full picture of the puzzle, right? Where do the puzzle pieces fit best? Enterprises are seeking to achieve that kind of best of both worlds scenario, and they're getting there in terms of hybrid cloud, but they're not getting all the way there in terms of, you know, the efficiency and optimization of multi-cloud. So this is definitely an ongoing challenge. All right, and the last kind of challenge theme I want to hit on is the growing adoption of edge deployments and how that's driving workload mobility kind of outside the traditional cloud or core data center environments. Research that we've done indicates that only 50% of enterprises expect their applications and workloads to stay in one place over the next year. I talked about this a little bit before, but workloads tend to move to achieve that best balance of cost and performance and accessibility. And it's kind of an ongoing process for many enterprises. And the growing prevalence of edge deployments has kind of added complexity, right? There used to be this kind of two sides of the equation where resources and workloads were either hosted in a centralized cloud data center or a centralized data center on premises. And now edge has kind of added a third dynamic to that relationship that is very nascent. Many enterprises don't kind of fully understand the added skills and customizability that are required to deploy cloud and on-premises resources at edge locations. But we know it's happening. So to give you a good data point, this kind of adoption of edge, we anticipate edge infrastructure spending on compute and storage will grow at a 18.9% compound annual growth rate over the 5-year period to 2024, reaching 33.3 billion. So a nascent market, a growing market. Again, IaaS is a key piece of that puzzle as workloads continue to move across environments. So after I've given you kind of a laundry list of challenges and statistics, I want to take a step back, and many of you may be asking yourselves, well, how do I fit into the cloud IaaS equation? I think there's a couple key ways that we see service providers and managed service providers adding a lot of value. One is helping enterprises close that hybrid and multi-cloud skill gap. Like I said, these are some of the most complex and difficult environments to operate and manage. It's an area where we see service providers stepping in to help fill that gap. The second, bridging gaps across hybrid and multi-cloud environments and avoiding vendor lock-in. Kind of a little bit of a buzzword, but the idea of vendor lock-in within cloud environments is still very high on the list of enterprise concerns. So a lot of times they'll look to a service provider to kind of help manage the underlying infrastructure across environments, ensure that their data remains kind of managed, mobile, and more fully under their control. And that kind of dovetails with the third benefit, enabling cloud data migration, consistency of data and application performance, and higher levels of data security and compliance. I guess I'll highlight the security and compliance aspect. Enterprises expect a certain kind of baseline level of performance, data durability, and SL. Right, I gave you some context on the data points on the market, but a lot of you may be asking yourselves, well, what does this mean for me as a service provider or an MSP? How do I fit into the IaaS equation? 4 key ways that we see MSPs and service providers adding a lot of value. The first is helping enterprises close the hybrid and multi-cloud skills gap. So there's still definitely gaps within enterprises in terms of operating efficiently, deploying resources efficiently, understanding their billing model, forecasting usage, huge area where MSPs can add value. The second, bridging gaps across hybrid and multi-cloud environments and helping avoid vendor lock-in. This was one of the main challenges we just talked about, right? Being able to achieve that multi-cloud, hybrid cloud nirvana in the most efficient fashion possible. That's an area where MSPs are stepping in to help enterprises execute that. And I'll focus on the buzzword here, vendor lock-in. This does mean something to enterprises. They don't want all of their data trapped in one public cloud environment where they'll have to pay exorbitant egress fees or something like that to move it. This is kind of a scenario that service providers can help enterprises avoid when they're architecting their strategy. Third, enabling cloud data migration, consistency of data management, and higher levels of data security and compliance. I'll focus on security and compliance because we've hit on it a couple of times, but enterprises expect kind of a baseline level of data protection from their cloud ecosystem. But then above that, things like disaster recovery, data protection, ransomware mitigation, even things as simple as antivirus, that's where they're looking to service providers to help them kind of level up their security capabilities in the cloud and add a higher level of resilience. The last, facilitating cloud application modernization. This is when we think about IaaS and enterprise adoption, think about a 2-step process. The first step, usually we see enterprises take a migration approach, where they're migrating their data, they're migrating their applications onto the cloud. The second step, as they mature, is usually a modernization process. They're actually re-architecting applications to run in what you would call quote unquote cloud native. This entails adoption of services like functions as a serverless or functions as a service or serverless, and containerization and container management platforms. That an area where enterprises may not have all of these skills to connect all the dots in cloud native. In the area of cloud native, that is where we see a lot of service providers adding value. So some key takeaways. Let me try to wrap everything up. The context here is, what should I look for when choosing a cloud IaaS partner? One is the availability of multiple consumption and deployment models. We talked about the value of having multiple billing models and the value of having multiple actual physical deployment models, not just public cloud multi-tenant, but also on-premises and single tenant to help achieve that kind of movement of workloads, whether it's whether it's from cloud to edge to on-premises and hybrid. The second is look for a provider that can deliver a range of compute and storage services. So on the storage side, it's not just about object storage, it's about the whole host of file, block, and object. On compute, it's not just about virtual CPUs, it's about accelerated compute, bare metal, and others to meet the widest range of workloads possible. And the last, look for a growing portfolio of adjacent cloud services. This is where a lot of the leading providers are investing a lot of time and money, is growing these adjacent services, whether it's something as simple as analytics and management to help enterprises better operate their infrastructure resources, to higher level, platform as a service and SaaS services, things like databases, things like IoT, to help them kind of address those workloads within the same ecosystem as well. So I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to hand things over to Noam to talk more about Zadara, but I'll be here for questions as we continue to go through. And I just want to say thank you all for your time and going through the overview with me. And Noam, over to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Andrew. Super interesting. And I'll try to dovetail as much as I can into that to repeat the important points that you made. Welcome, everybody. Again, I'm Noam. I am the VP of Global Solution Architecture for Zadara, and I'd like to walk you through Zadara Edge Cloud Services and how they relate to what we just heard from Andrew. Let me try to go in the correct direction, not backwards, but forwards. All right, here we go. So if by some chance you have not heard of Zadara, a quick overview of what we do to help locate us in this MSP and public cloud landscape that Andrew described. What Zadara does, Zadara provides infrastructure as a service services to MSPs. And we do that with three core tenets that are shown on this slide. First, our services are fully featured, meaning that they are designed to be enterprise grade and have the full set of capabilities that one would expect from an enterprise grade service. And we think of that as the minimum, as the table stakes. So when we started this company more than 10 years ago, we said to ourselves, well, in the service of making this a disruptive service, we can't give up capabilities. No one wants to walk backwards. So it's fully featured, and of course we'll provide more details around that in this presentation. In addition to being fully featured, it is fully elastic because it's intended to be an infrastructure as a service offering, and we took very great care to make it elastic in performance, elastic in capacity, elastic in features so that they can be turned on or off on the fly. Also elastic in location. The service can be provided in a variety of locations, and actually those locations can change over time. Of course, cover that too during the presentation today. And the way we like to refer to this full elasticity is in the sense of one can't make a mistake. Any decision or choice one makes today does not limit one's options tomorrow and in the future. So enabling MSPs to offer services to their customers, to end users, who are able to make decisions quickly and knowing that they're not painting themselves into a corner in any way. In addition to being fully featured and fully elastic, the service is also fully managed by us who built and designed the system, because we told ourselves, again, back more than 10 years ago now, that we are the experts on this. Why would we force our partners and customers to become PhDs in our technology if instead we can make it much easier for them to enjoy the service and not worry about it? So because we did this from the very beginning, we built the service from the ground up to be fully managed. We manage this globally on behalf of our MSP partners very, very cost effectively. In fact, we don't charge extra for the service, and we're able to do that because we design it from the ground up to be very, very efficiently managed by us and not require us to have an army of operators to make this work. So in summary, infrastructure as a service, offered as a service with a cloud business model to MSPs so that they can offer those services in turn to their customers, to your customers, and participate in this great public infrastructure as a service market that Andrew just told us about, that is growing rapidly and will become the main mode of consuming IT services by enterprise customers. All right, let's try to get this again. Sorry about this. Okay, better. Okay, I want to dwell a little bit on the business model because we think this is one of the key differentiators for what Zadara does, and it fits so well into what Andrew was talking about. Our business model is for you, the MSP, to only pay for services that you have sold. So you're paying for what you're providing your customers. You're not paying for capacity that you have but are not using. You're not paying for infrastructure that you have but are not using. And that means that there's no wasted spend. It also means that there are built-in margins. If your business shrinks, which hopefully does not shrink, but we all know that the MSP business is a revolving door, and sometimes, unfortunately, customers leave. If that business shrinks, so does your spend, exactly proportionately to the shrink. So your margin is preserved. You're not left in a situation where you're holding the bag, paying more for your infrastructure than what you are bringing in. We're very proud of that we take the risk for you because we built this company from the ground up to do that. So we own the hardware, we make all the capital expenditures, you do not. Your job is your business, and we enable you to focus on that. And to make things even better, because we own the hardware, we are responsible for refreshing it. And often when that hardware is refreshed, your costs go down because new hardware is more efficient than old hardware. And when that happens, you're actually able to grow your usage while your spend shrinks, as you see at the very right end of the slide. And we are able to do this for you, not just when it's convenient for us, but we're able to do it for you when it's convenient for you. If we have made available a more efficient component and you don't have it and you would like to have it, we will provide it to you on demand, non-disruptively, so that you can take advantage of better pricing, reduce your costs while keeping your usage the same or even increasing your usage. Again, a business model that serves what you're trying to do rather than serving the vendor first. What is it? What's in it? Think of it as an infrastructure as a service stack. Think of it as a mini cloud that can reside anywhere you want it to be. I'll put up a map shortly, but it can reside on your own premises, in your colo, or in some centralized locations that we've made available already. And it has compute services, it has storage services, and it has the networking that connects those compute services to the storage services and to the outside world. There should be no surprises in here. There's a VM, a virtual machine on-demand service. There's elastic block storage. There's VPC capabilities, load balancing capabilities, DNS capabilities, object storage capabilities, elastic IPs, and so forth. So a classic and fully featured cloud, compute and storage cloud. And as a little extra bonus, and to help compete in a world that's dominated by hyperscalers, the compute APIs are compatible with AWS. So the EC2 APIs, EBS APIs, VPC, ALB, NLB, and more, S3 are AWS compatible. Make this more in line with the ecosystem, with tools out there like Terraform and Ansible, make it easier for your customers to consume these services without having to provide them new training. To dive into the compute piece, which we call Z Compute, Z for Zadara, as I mentioned, offered anywhere you want it to be offered, inside your own colo or your own private data center, or adjacent to major public clouds and locations that we have pre-populated. It has the key features you would expect, as I was saying earlier. It has auto-scale groups. It has not just predefined virtual machine sizes, but also fully customizable virtual machine sizes, something that is not available in the major public clouds. Load balancers, snapshots that are based on our patented and award-winning storage technology, which I'll talk about on the next slide, and EBS compatible for boot and for data drives to make it very easy and accessible and compatible. Looking at the storage side, this is a fully featured enterprise-grade storage offering competitive with the major brands in the industry. It covers SSD, hard drive, and hybrid storage, including all the features that you can rattle off: dedupe, compression, encryption, thin provisioning, snapshots, remote replications, and much, much more. And also with the full complement of protocols. On the block side, supporting Fiber Channel, iSCSI, ICER. On the file side, supporting NFS and CIFS with full support for Microsoft Active Directory. On the object side, it's both S3 and Swift compatible. Again, available in any location that you would like it, with the ability to change locations if you'd like, and full elasticity. And it's a unified offering, meaning the system supports file block and object simultaneously using the same spare capacity pool, which means full flexibility for you. You don't need to decide in advance whether you need file block or object services. You can wait for your customers to tell you, or your customers even to self-provision what they need when they need it. And to dive deep on the spare capacity a little bit, just a very quick touch on the architecture. What we're looking at here is the physical view in the vertical columns. These are physical storage nodes, but the horizontal views are the logical view as seen by the tenant. So what we're looking at here are three different tenants. The first tenant is using an all-flash storage with 4 SSDs provisioned. The second tenant is using a hybrid architecture with hard drives and SSD cache with 10 drives. And the third tenant is using object storage with 6 drives. And to drive home a very important point, these tenants do not share anything. These tenants are each using completely different resources, not just the drives, but also the protocol stack that's serving out whatever protocol it is, the S3 protocol, iSCSI, Fiber Channel, NFS, CIFS. Those protocol stacks are running on compute resources inside these storage nodes and are dedicated per tenant. So tenant number 1 has a completely self-sufficient and self-contained environment that is separate and completely isolated from the second tenant and the third tenant, which means they cannot slow each other down. There's no noisy neighbor problem. It means that it's more secure because they're not sharing any resources. They can't access each other. And also the data can be managed and wiped individually. It is possible to wipe for user number 2 to wipe his or her data completely, in up to and including destroying the physical drives, which is only possible because of this unique architecture. And then, as I mentioned, the business model is such that only these drives here painted in yellow, in this day glow color, are the ones that are charged. The white drives are spare. They're there both as spares for failed drives and as room for expansion. Those drives are on us, on Zadara. You, the MSP, don't pay for those. Even though they reside in your private environment, you're not paying for those. That's part of the business model that pairs our success with yours and doesn't put risk on you, rather maintains the risk on our shoulders. I promised a map of where this service is available. That's in case you're wondering, is this a new thing? Is it more an idea than reality? And this is to show you, no, this is reality and has been for years now. There are more than 300 locations in the world where this service is available today. That number keeps growing, of course. All of these locations have equipment that is owned and operated by us on behalf of our partners and customers. And at each of these locations, one can provision on demand a storage array, which is block and file, an object storage instance, and or compute cloud services, virtual machine services. And these services can be offered and should be offered through you, the MSP, using your own branding and your own identity. So in all of these cases, these are services, compute and storage services that are offered by us to our MSP partners, and then from the MSPs to the end users, either directly, meaning the services exactly as they are, or as Andrew mentioned, as an infrastructure sitting under value-added services like platform as a service or software as a service. So this service can be offered as infrastructure service to end users or as infrastructure to higher level value-added services. Both these pins represent both of these models. To give you a sense of who these service provider partners are, this is of course a small subset of them. You can see some are major telecoms around the world: Verizon, CenturyLink / Lumen, Rakuten Mobile in NTT in Japan, KT in Korea, PLDT in the Philippines, O2 in the United Kingdom, and so forth. Some are colo or data center providers like Equinix and Cyxtera. Some are MSPs, classic MSPs, Sirius in the US, Daisy in the UK, K3 Starcom also in the UK. And some are vertically focused providers. Netrepid, for example, focuses on the healthcare vertical. So they are an MSP only to hospitals and clinics. In all, a global footprint across 6 continents, meaning Antarctica is not included, but all other continents are, and a number of public and private clouds combined actually exceeds 500, and to our estimation, the number of end customers is well into the thousands. We don't have full visibility because we serve you, the MSP, and you, the MSP, decide how visible we are to your end users, and in some cases we are not visible at all to the end users, in which case we don't know who they are. So we have to guess, and our guess is in the many thousands of end users. We do know of 2,000, but there are many, many more beyond that. I mentioned as our third tenet that we fully manage these systems on your behalf. So a little more information on that. So we have 4 network operating centers around the world in a follow the sun strategy. And with that, we provide live proactive management around the clock. That management is done by our engineers, and those are the same people who take support tickets. This is a very important point. We don't have a separate support organization, and we don't have a layered support organization. The support that we provide is directly from the people who are operating these systems worldwide, and it is a top level support, meaning you don't start at level 1 and work your way up. You start at level 3, and the only escalation possible from there is to the engineers who built the system. This, if you need help, you are speaking directly with the people who are able to help you and who already know what's going on because they are operating your system to begin with. Because we designed the system to be easily managed by us remotely and to be extremely reliable so that the system doesn't require a lot of intervention from us, we are very proud to provide 100% uptime guarantee. And if you're snickering at this point and saying, well, that's not possible, I will say yes and no. You're right, 100% uptime is not realistic, but our guarantee is there regardless. So we have a demonstrated track record over our many years of existence of 5.5 nines of availability, 99.9995% availability. The point of our 100% uptime guarantee is that even that minute or so per year that we're on that is the average average outage, we find that unacceptable, and we know that you do. So we provide SLA credits based on 100% availability, because that is what we're managing to, and that is what you want and deserve. And if we don't live up to 100%, we pay out to tell you that we're sorry and to inflict some financial pain on ourselves to show you that these are not just words. In addition to this, there's a full transparency about what's happening within the system. So there are notification alerts and an event log that we both have access to. So you get the alerts, we get the alerts, you can see the log, we can see the log. We act on it, and if we need anything from you, we contact you to get your instructions. But in every case, whether you're actively involved or not, you can see what's going on. This is the opposite of a black box, and we're proud of that as well. I mentioned before, we'll update the hardware and the software at no cost, and it's non-disruptive. So everything was designed with a cloud architecture, so that there is no such thing as planned maintenance with this architecture ever. And in addition to that, we have a DevOps team that can help you build more intricate, complex, and sophisticated solutions around this architecture. So to put it all together, to put what Andrew was saying and what I've just been covering over the past 20 minutes or so, data is exploding, and enterprises are having a harder and harder time keeping up with that explosion. And as a result, they're turning to service providers such as yourselves, which means in turn, you're going to have a harder and harder time keeping up with data growth. And this is where we come in. We created 10 years ago a service just for you, where we take the risk and we take the heavy lifting, and we free you up from capital expenditures that you may or may not return over their lifetimes, and we free you up from the pains of growth and allow you to focus on your strategic advantages, whatever those are, while we take care of the menial tasks of keeping the infrastructure up and running and humming along, with a business model that is built for you, where we shoulder your risk and have built-in margins for you, because we grow and shrink as you grow and shrink, and we offer the service to you anywhere that you need it. So again, keep giving you the flexibility to do what you need to do. If you want to use your own facilities, check. If you want to use a colo, check. If you want to be cloud adjacent, check as well. And any hybrid or multi-cloud version of that, as Andrew was saying, is key value added and something enterprises are looking for as they try to escape lock-in. So in summary, Zadara is a fully featured, fully elastic, fully managed infrastructure as a service for you, so that you can succeed and prosper in this exciting and challenging environment.
Okay, thanks very much, Andrew and Noam. Great presentations. I think that was a great overview of infrastructure as a service market from Andrew and current trends. And then, as always, Noam did a terrific job walking through how Zadara addresses a lot of those trends and needs and what we do at a core. Do have a couple of questions I think it's probably worth chatting about, since we have a few minutes prior to the end of the webinar. Noam, I think these are going to probably be for you. Actually, I know they're going to be for you. First question is, so does Zadara run on top of an AWS or an Azure or Google or public cloud, or can you clarify that?
Yeah, good question. The very short and incomplete answer is no. And the slightly longer answer is we are AWS compatible, true, but we run on our own infrastructure, and that provides two key advantages to our MSP partners. One is the location. This can be run anywhere. As you saw on the map, we provide many edge locations that tend to be much closer to where the customer is, and that's a competitive advantage. The other is we provide way more security and control. As I mentioned, it's a fully transparent service with very granular control, and allows things like physical data destruction, which is not possible with the large hyperscalers, but possible with us because we own and control the hardware.
Perfect, great. And that kind of blends into the next question. I think you began to actually address the next question, and that is, why would folks or MSP partners want to partner with Zadara versus going to an AWS for some of that as well?
Yeah, I think that's the key question to ask. Whoever asked it, thank you for bringing it up. There are the technical advantages that I just touched on, the location, the edge locations, which provide lower latency to the customer because they tend to be closer to the customer. The ability to for you, the MSP, to offer services from your own facility that you probably have invested in. The margins, the public cloud providers do not provide high margins at all, to say the least. They're slim and not conducive to profitable business, and that's not true with us. With us, we, as I said, our success is shared, and we provide very fat margins so that we all prosper at the same time. And the last reason to work with us is because we are MSP led, we're actually a way for MSPs to work together. If you look at the map that I showed, think of it as a club of MSPs, and if you need to offer services outside of your geographical area, we can help you do that through that global network that we have put together.
That's great too. Yeah, that also I think does a good job of addressing why we refer to our products as edge cloud services. And yeah, that map is great at illustrating that point. The other thing I would add too, I think you mentioned it, but just to clarify too, or add on to, is that our pricing model is also very, very simple. Not a lot of like egress ingress fees. It's very pretty straightforward and simple, and thus allowing partners to get a pretty good predictable model that they can model. We all know that without naming names, other cloud providers, there's a lot of different charges, and things can really swing month to month. And not so much the case with us, with our pricing model too. So thank you for that. Thank you for that, Noam.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's going to do it for us for this session, everybody. Thanks again for attending. If we can go to the next slide, we do have a survey I want to highlight. Thanks again for attending, and we do want to hear your feedback and insight. We have a survey. If you could take a few minutes to complete, we'd appreciate it. You got a couple days by the end of this Sunday to do it, and one of the respondents will get a $100 gift card. So please, if you get a few minutes, do that. And we will follow up today's webinar with an email that has this QR code in it as well. So don't have to hurry into it right now. We'll follow up with you and give you that link in the email. So thanks once again to our presenters, Noam and Andrew. Great content, and I think hopefully our attendees found it very insightful and interesting. And I want to thank you guys all for attending, and have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.